At the time this film was being made, Kosovo society was intensely debating the issue of visa liberalisation. Kosovar diplomats advocated for it in Brussels, closely observed by civil society and the media back in Kosovo. However, for most Kosovars, life has remained the same. Some continue to try their luck applying for Schengen and other visas, hoping they won't be the one in every third Kosovar who always gets refused. Others have tried to emigrate illegally. Illegal immigration has not only damaged Kosovo's image abroad, it's also encouraged organised crime and people smuggling. Thousands of illegal immigrants from Kosovo attempted dangerous journeys to seek asylum in the EU in 2014 and 2015. At the same time, hundreds of thousands of refugees from Syria and Afghanistan continue to risk their lives to reach the EU. Both instances demonstrate that the strict closing of borders can only lead to tragedy.
People were fed with isolation. People were fed up with status quo in Kosovo, both politically inside Kosovo and vis-a-vis European integration.
People migrate for economic reasons regardless of how difficult it is to cross borders. They have done so for centuries. This is not something we're discovering here.
There was no hope on the horizon.
So a visa liberalization policy will not stop people from migrating, nor I think will it have an effect of increasing the numbers who will.
Kosovars have migrated for several decades. The migrant wave of the 1970s and 80s was directed primarily towards Germany and Switzerland, two countries which are now home to a successfully integrated Kosovar diaspora. The migration of Kosovars during the 1990s was caused by the repressive Milosevic regime, which pressured thousands to leave the country. Despite the initial flood of returnees from the West after the 1999 war, disappointment in the country's slow economic development led to a steady wave of silent migration during the 2000s. Kosovo's migration trends have been analysed in order to find out what caused the breakaway from silent migration and the unprecedented spike of migrants fleeing the country at the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2015.
The big waves of migration in Europe in the last 20 years were Moldovans going to Italy, were Albanians going to Italy and Greece, were Kosovars, ending up in Germany and Switzerland in the 90s, all in a situation where these countries had a visa requirement.
During the silent migration wave, we have noticed that the profile was the average male, Kosovan male, aged 25 to 35, usually with a primary education, not even a secondary education, with family income below poverty line and generally living in poverty.
Before Kosovo's recent migration spike, 70% of those fleeing Kosovo during its years of silent migration said that their primary reasons for leaving the country included high unemployment, low wages, and poor living conditions. The latest flood of migrants gave dramatically different reasons for leaving. Their average wage was higher than those of past migrants by €262, and the average family was making some €407 per month, far more than previous generations of migrants.
And this profile has evolved gradually. When we interviewed 2015, beginning of 2015, the massive wave of migrants, the profile was completely different.
The number and kind of people leaving Kosovo at the beginning of 2015 surprised observers. Not only was their mass exodus unexpected, it didn't resemble Kosovo's previous migration patterns.
But one of the main characteristics of the second wave, the latest one, was that most of them had easiness into moving abroad, and the cost of moving abroad illegally was quite cheap.
One thing is clear. Because Kosovo citizens have no freedom of movement, a black market for people smuggling was made possible for traffickers in Kosovo, Serbia, Hungary, and elsewhere. Traffickers have preyed on potential migrants and their inability to travel legally. Responding to high demand, people smugglers lowered their prices in October 2014.
So if you wanted to move before 2014, on average everyone would pay some 3,000 euros per person, total cost of paying the trip, moving illegally as well. And this price has dropped to 600 euros within a year.
The price had never been cheaper and made it easy to attract people willing to pay for a chance at a better life.
It's obvious that there is a clear link between the phenomenon of migration and the fact that the country is, I will be free to say, forced to live in the ghetto because of non-liberalized visa regime to Schengen countries.
Expert observers were not surprised by the influx of migrants leaving the country for two reasons.
It is a vicious circle. Visa regime and migration have a causality relation between themselves. Visas and migration, I would say, intensify and aggravate each other, leading to a worsening of the situation. So let's look at it more concretely. When people live isolated, then they have less solutions for their problems, and the economic situation gets worsened. This triggers them to find solutions for their accumulated problems, what inevitably creates illegal migration markets, where criminals offer their services to transport them into Schengen area. And as an endpoint of this circle, people migrate. Finally, the more people migrate, the less likely the EU member states are to lift the visa regime for Kosovars. And this goes in an endless circle.
If you have a possibility for legal migration, you will have less pressure for illegal migration, of course. If you have visa liberalization, you will have much less illegal migration because people will travel for 3 months, they will come back. Even if they work illegally, they will not overstay because they will want to go back and forth.
But what's the connection between illegal immigration and visa liberalization?
The challenge then becomes to take the migration debate away from the visa debate and have a rational debate on how Kosovars who will not find jobs in Kosovo can legally fill jobs which exist in other European countries.
How can these two conflicting processes be reconciled? How can illegal immigration be stopped from a country with no freedom of movement? If visa restrictions are removed, won't requests for asylum increase?
Well, let us look at asylum. Every Balkan asylum seeker basically knows today that the asylum claim will be rejected. Rejection rates are extremely high. This is true for Macedonians, it's true for Serbs, it's true for Albanians, it's true for Kosovars. So why do they apply for asylum? Well, in some countries, applying for asylum creates a process that takes so long, and you get some benefits that for some people it is worth doing even if they don't get it. Because remember, they do something legal. There's nothing illegal about applying for asylum. What we see, however, is that the member states which have a fast procedure, you can still apply, but it's very fast, like Switzerland today, which is in Schengen, Austria, the Netherlands, France, they don't have this problem. Macedonians and Serbs don't apply there.
Migration doesn't necessarily have anything to do with visa liberalization. People migrate in order to work and settle in another country, whereas visa liberalization simply allows people to travel. To put it simply, people will migrate, regardless of whether their countries have visa liberalization or not.
Just one last word on migration. If we look at the countries that have developed fastest in the last 15 years in Europe, success stories, real success stories in terms of GDP per capita, catching up, it's Poland, it's the Baltic states, it's Romania, which is often forgotten. All these countries developed fast while they had massive migration. Migration was not a sign of failure for these countries. It was part of a successful process.
Kosovo is the only European country whose citizens cannot travel to the EU without a visa.
I became Deputy Minister January 30th this year. My job includes assisting the Minister in implementing his duties in the European integration agenda. So I applied the application for visa, and the official there required that I have an invitation. And I wasn't asking of any special treatment. I was there at the small window, just as anyone else in Kosovo does when he goes to apply for a visa. So what I did in the afternoon was I retracted my application. I went then to Skopje to apply for a visa for another visit I had to go. I got the visa, but it was 1 year duration with one entry.
If a high-ranking government official has to jump through so many hoops to get a visa, what can an ordinary citizen expect? Kosovars can travel freely to 4 European countries, a few countries in the Balkans and Turkey. Oh, and Gambia and a few islands in America and Asia.
In the past years, it has become cumbersome to at least submit an application for a visa, because in average you would have to wait 2 months before you can do so.
This is against EU laws, specifically Regulation number 810/2009 of the European Parliament and European Council. Every third Kosovar is refused a visa.
On the other hand, with the rejection rates increased to almost 30%, way beyond the world average of 4.5, people have really started to question how worthwhile it is to submit an application.
The potential of Kosovars is cut short by such policies. Students can't study abroad. Businessmen can't work with foreign companies. Ordinary people can't visit their relatives. With such isolation, it's impossible for Kosovars to feel like they are part of Europe. It isn't clear why Kosovo is singled out as a security risk. Its neighbours in the Eastern Balkans, Romania and Bulgaria, have a combined population of 30 million and enjoyed visa-free travel for years. The rest of the Balkans, with a population of approximately 20 million people, has travelled freely through Europe for the past 7 years. Kosovo, with a population of 2 million, has been denied this right with no justification.
This is wrong and it's counterproductive because it is punishing a group of people who are trying to travel for business or tourism in order to try and achieve sort of higher political goals that are not actually being achieved.
The question remains, why is the European Union so nervous about opening its borders to 2 million Kosovars?
Section 5, speed her up, 401.
More than 3 years ago, Kosovo's institutions approved a unilateral roadmap for visa liberalisation. It was based on the model of roadmaps issued to neighbouring countries, all of which quickly received visa liberalisation. Civil society experts say Kosovo was not treated fairly in its visa liberalisation process compared to the rest of the region.
Just evaluate Kosovo fairly.
Monitors of the visa liberalisation process say the EU constantly presents Kosovo with new criteria, prolonging the country's isolation. Kosovo's slow progress in visa liberalisation appears to be politically motivated, rather than an issue of meeting technical requirements.
The visa liberalisation process for Kosovo was unfair from the very beginning.
Back. Section 5, more speed, 47.
In the case of Kosovo, there were other conditions added which had nothing to do really with this policy. One example that comes to mind is political party financing, which in Kosovo you need to now show that this is implemented at the Central Election Commission level, which is not in any of the other documents, not in the Western Balkan countries and not in the roadmap for Turkey today. So, as a civil society, I want to be able to hold my government accountable if they're not meeting certain conditions, but I do not know whether they have or have not met the conditions required by the Commission.
We increasingly hear European ambassadors in Kosovo telling us that the special tribunal and the dialogue with Serbia are conditions for visa liberalisation. Everything the EU wants to achieve in Kosovo is conditioned with the promise of visa liberalisation. This directly affects the quality of life of Kosovars by denying them their right to freedom of movement, a right that is simply necessary in today's globalised world. The EU's stance means Kosovo passport holders are denied the right to organise their lives as they see fit.
The visa roadmap for Kosovo is both broader but also deeper in terms of criteria compared to the other countries in the region. Secondly, Kosovo's roadmap requires more longer-term reforms, which is something that Kosovo may not deliver in a 3-year timeline.
So Kosovo now has a passport and ID card which are really secured, most of the secured in the region of Western Balkan.
Seriously, those technical criteria have all been met in accordance with our roadmap. So now what we basically need from the European Commission is to evaluate on that and also to build that political will which is necessary among the EU member states and to deliver on Kosovo, because people of Kosovo cannot any longer remain the only people in the region without the right of the visa-free.
7 years after all its neighbours won the right to travel freely through the Schengen zone, Kosovo remains a ghetto. In the meantime, EU member states have further restricted entry through their borders, effectively putting in place a new Iron Curtain, one that divides people into EU citizens and undesirable others. For Kosovars who live in the middle of Europe but cannot travel freely through the EU, this means that life has ceased to be normal.
We have been asking all the time just to be treated as fairly as the other countries who have benefited already from this process were. So even now, my only appeal to the European Commission is to be treated fairly and based on the merit. And if we will be treated fairly and based on the merit, I'm 100% that the evaluation will be positive and recommendation will be positive, because we have been working hard.
An apparent solution would be that the EU liberalizes visas for Kosovo. However, not liberalizing visas creates a new problem, increases migration, what inevitably increases the difficulty of solving the original problem, fulfilling criteria for the visa liberalization.